Welcome to the Healthy and Redeemed podcast, hosted by Healy Eichert. Healy is a licensed counselor with a passion for helping Christians live healthier lives, emotionally and spiritually. Each episode combines the truth of God's Word with practical advice to help you in your everyday life. Whether you want to grow emotionally, strengthen your faith, or handle life challenges with more peace, this podcast is for you. We're so glad you've joined us. Let's get started.
To God be the glory. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am your host, Healy, and this is the Healthy and Redeemed podcast. This episode is part 2 of Renewing Your Mind. In part 1, I talked about what cognitive behavioral therapy was, as that is defined by the American Psychological Association. And I also looked at several scripture passages that I believe are the biblical foundation to the importance of healthy thoughts. And if you haven't listened to part 1 of the series, I would encourage you to do so. And I hope that it will encourage you because I believe healthy thoughts are the key to being mentally and spiritually well. So in this episode, I'm going to focus on the cognitive behavioral triangle, just as an illustration of how our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are connected and how they influence each other. And I also want to talk about how we can use that or how that works as we want to change our emotions and manage those better. I'm also going to touch on neural pathways of the brain and automatic negative thoughts. Do you have a lot of negative emotions and kind of choose to wallow in those sometimes? Do you have a lot of self-talk that's very condemning? And do you feel bad about yourself and the things that you do? And have you ever tried to change before and had no luck? I really believe that if you can understand the concepts that we're going to talk about today and in the next episode, that your life will be transformed. Like, I know a lot of people can say that, but I really believe it. I have seen it happen really as quick as a couple of weeks if you really practice the skills and you do those. Now, of course, the person that did it in a couple weeks, they were very highly motivated to change. But I do think the same is possible. If you're very committed and want to make the change, I believe that this will help you do it. The only thing that it really takes is some recognition of what's going on in your mind and then some oomph to actually make the changes happen. So the really important part of it is, though, that you stay consistent. Not perfect, but consistent. So it's important to remember as we think about changing our feelings, changing our emotions, that we are not viewing emotions or feelings as the enemy. They are a gift. They have a purpose. God has given them to us for a reason. But we are called, like any good gift that we receive from the Lord, we are called to manage it well. We're called to be good stewards of all good gifts. And even our gifts can be things that hurt us if we don't learn to manage it well. So this is not like when we work on managing our emotions, it doesn't mean the emotions are a bad thing. We're just managing them, keeping them in line so we can do what God has called us to do in life without getting hung up on what our emotions have to say about it. So if you have a pencil and paper, this cognitive behavioral triangle is helpful if you can kind of sketch it out. And so that way you can just see it as you think about it later, or you can see it kind of in your mind once you sketch it out. So I don't know. I just think sometimes a diagram or something is always helpful in remembering. So the cognitive behavioral triangle is a foundational concept in cognitive behavioral therapy. So unless you can Google this diagram, you can look in my book. It's on page 85. So if you can't Google at the moment or you can't look in my book, you may not have my book, so you can't obviously look. But I want you just to imagine a triangle or sketch out a triangle. And at the top point I want you to put the word thoughts. And at the bottom right corner of the triangle, I want you to put behaviors. And then at the bottom left, right, feelings. This triangle shows us the interconnectedness between those three concepts, the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviors, okay? So understanding that these interact with each other is really important for identifying and addressing and changing unhealthy patterns in our lives. So each one of these concepts, the feelings, the behaviors, the thoughts, they each influence the other. We don't normally think much about this process, but it is happening all day long as things happen throughout the day. I want you to imagine this as things happen in your day of thinking what's influencing what, how things are influencing each other. Let's talk about an event that might trigger this process. So if you have my book, you can go to page 92, and we're going to use that example that's in my book. Okay, I just said my book, and you, if this is your first time joining us, you may have no idea what I'm talking about. But I have a book called Changing Your Feelings, a workbook for anxiety and worry from a Christian perspective. And in this book, it will help people walk through managing anxiety and worry, and depression and anger too. But so the diagram is in the book. I've kind of got a little bit different diagram than sometimes I use, but I thought that was more helpful. Anyway, so outside the triangle, you're going to put the event. And our event or situation is going to be this. Our event is we walk up to two friends and they immediately stop talking. Okay. For kids, sometimes I have them imagine that they're walking, they've got their tray, they're in the cafeteria, and they see two friends laughing while they're looking at them. But for us, we're just going to go with the simple concept. We walk up and the two friends are talking, and then suddenly they stop. For some people, we may think they're talking about us. That might be where our thoughts go automatically. Oh my goodness, they must be talking about me. If we think they are talking about us, how might that thought cause us to feel? What might be our emotion if we have that thought, they're talking about me, or they were talking about me? We might feel sad, we might feel confused, or even angry. And in response to those feelings, how might you behave if you're having the emotions of sad, confused, and angry? So maybe you don't talk much, maybe you withdraw or leave the conversation, or just kind of maybe limit the engagement you have with them in that conversation or for the rest of the day. However, what if we have the thought, same situation, but we have the thought, they were probably talking about something very personal, embarrassing, and they didn't want others to know? What feeling might you have as a result of thinking that thought? Maybe curiosity, maybe compassion or empathy. And then how might you respond to those feelings? Maybe you would be kind or engage in some good listening skills. Maybe we'd pay attention to them, just making sure that everything is good. So using that example, can you see kind of how we went counterclockwise around the triangle, how each one influenced the other? Now, in this situation, you may not know the truth, or you may not ever know like why they stopped talking. But if you don't know, or you never figure it out, why not think something better that's going to bring about more positive feelings, right? If we don't know the truth, why not just think something better? So another example might be that I hear in session a lot is that we text someone something and they don't text us back, especially if we might have done a joke or some sort of funny, sarcastic response. Sometimes tone is hard to tell in text. So often my clients will think that person, if they don't respond back, that they're mad at them. So that's our thought. They're mad at me. Now, depending on the context and our own past, this could get really out of control in our mind really quick. But we're just going to stick to the simple thought that they're mad at me. And we're going to put that in the triangle, okay? So the situation is they didn't text me back, and my thought or interpretation of that event is they're mad at me. So the feeling can stem from, the feelings that we might have can stem from sadness to anger at yourself, anger at them. Our behavior might be that we might pull away or not talk to them the next time we see them. So let's imagine a different thought of, oh, they probably missed my text. Or they read it and thought they responded but didn't. Or maybe they just didn't have a response to send. Or maybe they're busy, which is highly likely when we're talking about text. How might your feeling be based on that thought? They probably just missed my text. So it could be peace, it could be curiosity, or maybe you're mentally making a note to follow up the next day. And so what might be your behavior based on those feelings? Maybe your behavior might just stay the same, right? We might be still friendly and care for them and love them. Now, I believe it's okay just to ask, like, did you see my text? Did you, whatever. I don't think we should ever go around saying, are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? Because that indicates something with us. And we should know if we're thinking, are they mad at me? That probably we need to work something out. That's something that we need to deal with. But I believe that you can say, hey, I'm curious. I sent you a text yesterday and you didn't respond. Did you see it? Or you could just let it go, which is, if it didn't really require a response, then I would probably just let it go. But if it was like, a question or something like that you did need a response, then you could just check in later, right? So we want to be healthy, and we want to always presume the best in people until we know something different. So if we do find out they're mad at us or something like that, then we want to stick in truth as we're thinking, but we also want to be healthy in that, and that then we could apologize or something like that, but we don't need to beat ourselves up. We just apologize and then continue our relationship. But if we don't know, we never find out, we're presuming the best until we know something different, okay? So let's do a common situation where we start in the corner of feelings. So we have an event, and then we're going to start in the feelings location. So those last two were we started in the thoughts corner there up top, and now we're going to start in the feelings corner. So we wake up in the morning, we're feeling sad or grumpy or down, and our behavior might be, if we're feeling that way, we hit the snooze, or we decide to stay in bed longer, or we just pull the covers over our head and stay there, right? So from those behaviors, though, then you may have thoughts of how bad of a person you are because you can't get up when your alarm goes off. You might miss making the kids breakfast, or now you're going to have to grab something, and now you're a bad mom, and the whole cycle can get pretty bad if you let it keep going. So, but if somebody's like wanting to change this cycle, they wake up and they're feeling sad or grumpy, and instead of hitting the snooze, you're going to change the behavior. You make yourself get up. So that's a behavioral change that you're going to do something. You're going to do something different. You're not necessarily thinking something different. Now you're doing something different. You make yourself get up, and then maybe you do a behavior like pray or turn on some praise music. Like, these are all behaviors that you can do that help you feel better. So you begin to do those. Pretty soon, though, your thoughts will begin getting more in line with those behaviors, right? If you might, as you're singing the praise song or praying, that gratitude will come to your heart, reminding yourself of how much God loves you and is with you, and that he sent his son to die for you, that can fill your heart with gratitude and make things different. So regardless of where you start on the triangle, what we're trying to intercept here is we're going to either change our behaviors to be something healthy or to change our thoughts to be something healthy. We have talked about healthy behaviors in earlier episodes when we talked about coping skills, and I've probably integrated some healthy behaviors throughout all my episodes. But today we're specifically talking about thoughts, because behaviors are good. They can help you feel better pretty quickly. Thoughts are a little bit harder, but that's where our long-term change comes from. We need both. We need to be doing both, okay? So, as we begin to look at healthier thoughts, this is going to affect the whole way we do life. So if you think something bad, this is bad in my life, whatever that is, right? Like, I hate my work, I have no friends, my body hurts. If you're thinking those thoughts, you are not going to feel joyful. There's just no way that if you're thinking, I have no friends, for example, like, how are you going to derive joy from that thought? You're not. From that thought, you can feel sad, depressed, or hopeless. And your behavior might be that you start pulling away from others, or sleeping long hours, or not doing tasks around the home. These behaviors will end up reinforcing the very feelings that you don't like. Now, I hope that you see how thoughts can have a big impact on your life. Let me share a quick story with you. When I was studying counseling way back when, we were studying concepts like these. And I had about a 40-minute drive home from class all the time. And so I often processed the class that evening, me and God, just processing. And I had decided to try an experiment. And I did try lots of things when I was going through school. Like, I would just, like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me try that at home. So this is one of those experiments that I did at home. I tested a lot of parenting things during that time. But anyway, so I decided for 30 days, I was going to wake up and say out loud, today is going to be a great day. Now, I'm not big on cheesy things like that. That is not my personality, but I did do it. And I did it the whole month. And I really, like, at first, I was thinking, oh my goodness. But I really noticed that my mood was better. I even interpreted things like a flat tire as not even that bad. I would be like, oh, thankful I have a jack, or thankful someone stopped to help me, those sort of things. It was a whole different way of viewing even bad things. So you've probably heard the quote by Chuck Swindoll. I read it in one of the books I have by him, but I can't remember which book. But he said, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. Now, I'm not totally sure about all the percentages of that, but it is true. It is how we react to things. Hard things happen. Hard things are coming. Unfair things happen. Unfair things are going to happen. Loss and trauma happen. They're going to happen. How we view and react to life is going to either help or hurt our mental and our spiritual health. That experiment proved to me that how I perceive life really does affect how I handle life. Bad things happened, hard things happened, but I viewed it differently. Now, I did stop the experiment, obviously, after 30 days, but that is grounded in me, that how I view life is really going to be how I react to life. So, do we look at the good Do we see the good or do we only see obstacles? Obstacles are there, but there are also solutions. Let's not ignore that part, right? Another part of this thinking part, the top part of the triangle, is something that's referred to automatic negative thoughts. And if you like acronyms, ANTS is the acronym to automatic negative thoughts. And automatic negative thoughts are just that. They're thoughts that pop into your mind that are negative. So now I don't know this for a fact, but my belief is that everybody has these automatic negative thoughts. How do automatic thoughts work? How do these ants work? Well, let's say I fail a test. My automatic negative thought, so the thought that immediately jumps into my mind is, I'm dumb. Now, that might not be your automatic negative thought, but because I believed this at a young age, that is the first thing that comes to my mind if I have a failure of some sort. So ants, or the negative thoughts, are the first thing that pop into your mind. You don't have to think about it. You're putting no thought into it. It's just there. It just pops in. And even if you don't recognize it, they still have an influence on us at a subconscious level. And so this is kind of the goal of the cognitive triangle, to help us recognize that we do have these thoughts and that we need to do something about them. Thoughts pop into our mind all the time. And I tell my clients, we aren't responsible for that automatic negative thought. We're not responsible for the first thought that we have. We're responsible for what we do with that thought, our second thought. So what am I going to do with that automatic negative thought, my first thought of I am dumb? Now, the thought I am dumb is not bad. That was an automatic one that popped into my mind. But now that I recognize it, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to think of all the times that I did dumb things? Or am I going to think of every time that I got something wrong, every time I failed a test, every time I failed at anything? Or will I take captive that thought and remind myself I am smart, and remind myself of all the times I did smart things? Or even better than that is that I have the Holy Spirit within me, and that makes me wise. I have access to great wisdom, and I can remind myself of some smart things that I've done or some wise decisions that I've made in my life. Now, of course, they're not all wise, but I have made some wise ones. I can remind myself that I don't have to be the smartest person in the room to be smart. I don't have to be Solomon to have wisdom or to use wisdom. Another thing that we can do when we have an automatic thought, besides dwelling on it or looking for proof that it is true, is to condemn ourselves for that thought. So the automatic thought pops into my mind, I am dumb. And then starts the condemnation. Gosh, Healy, again with the dumb thought. You really just can't get it right. You know better than this. Why are you thinking that again? You are such a bad Christian. Get a hold of your thoughts. We are called to keep our thoughts captive, and you can't even stop thinking this negative thought over and over. Maybe you really are dumb. So that kind of self-talk doesn't work either. We don't beat ourselves into submission with condemnation. That's not helpful. And those kind of condemning, beating ourselves over the head, that keeps us stuck. That keeps us doing the same negative behavior, and we don't want to do that. So what do we do with these crazy ants? Well, yes, we take them captive and we make them obedient. And we will take the negative thought, and this is the practical step. We're going to take the negative thought and replace it with a healthy thought. In the next episode, I'm going to take some negative thoughts that are very common. I'll use some of my own, but I'll use a lot that I hear in session also, and we will practically learn how to change that, the criteria of a healthy thought, and how to make that change. So, but just knowing that you can make that change is good, and you can start right now. Remember, when we change one place in the triangle, the other ones are going to be influenced. We can't necessarily will our feelings to be different, and so we work on the other two areas of the triangle, our thoughts and our behaviors. If you can identify and replace your negative thought, you are going to change your feelings. Hence the title of my book. Changing your feelings. You are going to be able to change your feelings. I know we hear people say all the time, I can't help the way that I feel. And that's not true. We can help the way that we feel, but we're not going to do it by just trying to change our emotions. We change our emotions by working in one of the other corners of the triangle. We change our thoughts or we change our behaviors. Our last point today that I want to talk about are neural pathways. Did you know that repeated negative thoughts create neural pathways in your brain? Okay, we've got all these connections between neurons that form in our brain, and those are pathways. The stronger the connections become, like the more that we think negative thoughts, the stronger the connections between the neurons, the stronger the pathways are going to be. Sometimes my clients get very discouraged when I tell them about the neural pathways because they're like, oh my gosh, my pathways are very strong. I've been thinking pretty negative or anxious or worried for many years. I'm not sure I can change that because those pathways are very strong. And that's true. That it's going to be hard. So I had a neural pathway of I'm dumb or I'm ugly. So I had very strong connections in those areas. It was a well-worn path in my brain. And when I started thinking something different, that would create a new neural pathway. God has created our brain in which it can be changed. So we can create new neural pathways. So even though we have these strong pathways over here on the negative tilt, we can make them to go more positive, more healthy. It does take a lot of practice and consistency to make sure those connections grow strong. And people have some different analogies of how they compare these pathways to, like, an example. But I like to use, like, imagine that you are in the woods and there's a pathway that you've been taking lots of years, okay? And it is really well worn and it's kind of smooth and, so just imagine that. So like we have a trail that goes down the hill and it goes down to the creek. But let's say I don't want to take that path anymore. It's not good for whatever reason. I want to create a new path. So the first time I take the path, that it's going to be really hard, right? Because there's no worn pathway. I'm kind of trudging on the new thing. It is going to be hard. The brain works the same way as those trails. Like as we continue to travel down this new path, it will get better and better as we keep traveling down. Now, we do have to stop going on the other path so that it'll kind of grow up and disappear. My personal belief is that the old pathway, even though we're taking this new one a lot more often and it's becoming really worn and strong, the those connections are getting stronger and stronger. I do believe that other pathway is like maybe if we're imagining like trails in the woods, especially a pathway that's been worn a long time and that's been there for years, I think at some level there's always a weak connection there, but it's still there. And I'm guessing this because I don't have thoughts of I'm dumb or I'm ugly all the time. I don't go there. And if those thoughts pop into my mind, that's why I think they're still kind of there but weak. If like there's an event that triggers it, like I fail a test, like that would be the first thought that would pop into my mind. But I can quickly change that. And I have no scientific evidence for this at all. This is just like my personal opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think especially when we've come to believe things when we were young, that those stay like this old trail that we can still kind of see, but nobody takes it anymore. And that's kind of what I imagine that as. Again, no evidence for that at all. But there is evidence for as we take the new healthy thinking route, we create new neural pathways in our brain. And that is so important and so exciting that God has made our brain to be able to do that. That although we may have these negative, unhealthy thoughts, and that has created a certain pathway in our brain, that God has enabled us as we think healthier thoughts, we're creating new neural pathways in our brain. I don't know about you, but that is so encouraging to me that God says, I'm going to create you like this so you can change it if you want to. I mean, we have free will, so we can stay negative and unhealthy if we want to. But I personally don't want to. And if you're here, you probably don't want to either. Looking at this, and we're going to talk more about this next time, but just looking at if we have a thought like, I can't do this, and then we start learning to replace that thought with, I'm learning how to do this, that is a new pathway. And every time that we replace the negative, unhealthy thought with a healthy one, that pathway is going to become stronger and stronger, and the unhealthy one is going to become weaker and weaker. Our thoughts are powerful, and learning to manage them is the key to long-term emotional, spiritual, and mental health. There isn't a whole lot we can control in this life, but we can control those three things. We can control our thoughts, our behaviors, and our emotions. So if you struggle with negative thoughts and you were able to identify some today, I'm going to give you a homework assignment, okay? And I'm going to encourage you this week to keep a log of all your negative thoughts. I know that sounds very exciting, right? A little encouraging, no, a little discouraging. But I don't want you to be discouraged. If it's a long list, who cares? If it's a short list, sometimes it's just because the same things are repeating over and over. But don't even worry about that. Look, we're looking forward to change. And it's going to be easier than you think. Well, maybe not. Okay, maybe it isn't going to be easier than you think. But it'll be hard, but it's totally achievable. Okay, it is achievable. I'd like you to keep a list of your negative thoughts. So it'll just be a statement like something like I have. I'm dumb. I'm not a good mom. I'm lazy. I'm, whatever it is. Write those down. Even if you have negative thoughts about other people, write those down too. In this log, I want you to, yes, write down your negative thoughts and then write down the situation also, okay? What I'm going to do next time is teach you how to replace those negative thoughts with something that's healthy. Because that's the way we change our thinking. We don't just push the negative thoughts out of our mind. We have to actually replace them. We have to actually address what the thought is. I mean, if I just shove I am dumb out of my mind, that does nothing to fix my thought. I have to replace it with something that is healthy. Healthy is hard. So please don't shy away from doing this. We want to do the hard stuff, and you can. Healthy is hard, but it is so rewarding. I want to encourage you. You can definitely do this, okay? Let's go now living healthy and redeemed, reflecting Jesus Christ rightly in all that we do. Thank you so much for joining me, and Lord willing, I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. The information provided is to be used as a resource. If you have a serious mental issue, we would encourage you to contact a therapist in your state.